Mr. Carney, are you going to be serving the full 8 years?
A cool wave by Mark Carney this week as he made his way into 10 Downing Street, ready to meet Prime Minister Theresa May, only to reveal later in the evening he would stay on as Governor of the Bank of England until 2019, after speculation he'd lost a battle with Brexit hardliners.
And when we talk about the government, we must talk about the core leadership here, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. Both have a lot of faith in the governor, but of course both are frustrated by global monetary policy right now.
The real issue for the UK is how Mr. Carney will steer the economy in the Brexit storm before he leaves. For supporters and critics alike, the governor has been vocal about the painful road ahead.
There is a little bit lower that the Bank of England can go with interest rates. They could undergo more corporate bond purchases, more government bond purchases, and they may still explore other areas like the term funding scheme in order to try and stimulate the economy. But I think ultimately it's more down to the government to try and keep the economy ticking along more so than the central bankers. I think it's extremely important reassuring investors that Britain is still a place to invest. I think specifically, I know the current account deficit has fallen, but at a time when it is still extremely large, we need to ensure that investor appetite in the UK is still strong. But I think it is in a means of wanting to keep the economy ticking along. Investors want to know that the economy is going to continue to perform well and weather the storm, and that companies aren't going to look to leave, which is going to be a long-term drag on GDP.
Despite manufacturing figures coming in better than expected for this month, Britain's balance of payments is at a record high, as it imports far more than it exports to the rest of the world. Despite the sterling rising to around 122 against the dollar, there are major concerns with the fundamentals of the UK economy, well beyond what Carney can offer. Many experts are warning the government needs to focus on strengthening its bilateral ties with the likes of China and the US. That will in turn help boost investor sentiment to pour money back into Britain.
But the problem right now is, despite the weaker pound supporting demand from exports, it's pushing up import costs, something the government hasn't addressed, which will hit consumer pockets sooner rather than later. So looking ahead to this Super Thursday, with services PMI, the key inflation report coming out, and the BOE meeting, Carney will once again be in the spotlight to offer direction.
I think they'll hold their powder dry and they'll want to see how the UK economy evolves. It obviously held up well with the Q3 GDP numbers. The signals early on in Q4 are fairly good. They may look to wait to the February inflation report or indeed not move at all. The key reason they may not move at all, at least in the stimulative direction, is because inflation, strong inflation prints starting to come through imported inflation because of the weakness of sterling, and also to try and put a floor under sterling.
The stark reality setting in for many is that the UK government has handed over the steering of the ship to the Bank of England, with little clarity on direction before Brexit procedures come into play in March, putting Mark Carney and the Bank of England at centre stage. Mariam Bamard for CCTV.